Whew. Now, if we weren't watching our calories and our fat, we would put a big old dab of butter in there, but we're not going to do that. Sorry, that goes on top. Turn off the stove. Everything is done. Okay, so I got my meatloaf in the oven. I've got my yams. They can sit there. Now we are going to make the Brussels sprouts. Now, for the Brussels sprouts, you only get 4 ounces. They don't lose that much moisture when you cook them, but we are going to measure them out. What was in here? What was in here? That was meat. I'm not going to use that. Raw meat. I'm going to get another bowl. Again, get yourself a scale. Put a bowl on top of it. Before I do that, actually, I'm going to trim them. That is smart. Why jip ourselves? And with trimming Brussels sprouts, it's very easy. All you do is cut the little end off and pull off some of these leaves on the outside. And we're going to actually cut these in half. So they're like little mini cabbages. That's what I love about Brussels sprouts, right? They look like little cabbages. And I'm going to cut these. Brussels sprouts are delicious for you. Actually, I was looking at these earlier, and I was reading that, they're an excellent source of vitamin C and an excellent source of vitamin K. And do you know that my nose is still running from the cayenne pepper? Okay. I'm going to zero it out. So it zeroes out, puts the weight of the bowl on it, and then I'll put my Brussels in. That's 4 3/4 ounces. They do lose some moisture, so I'm actually going to actually make it go to 5. I don't know if it loses an ounce, but we're just doing 1 serving. We're just doing 1 serving of it. Okay, that's what I got. I'm now going to turn my pan up to 5 to medium high and put a little bit of olive oil in it. And yes, I don't always count my olive oil in the calories. But if I'm trying to eat 1,500 or lower a day or 1,800, I always leave a couple hundred at the end of the day because for olive oil, for maybe I threw caramel in my mouth when I was in the cupboard and I didn't account for it. So, but I am going to do 2 ounces of onion, and that is not a lot of onion. In fact, this is probably, if I cut this in half and cut this off, and remember, onions are sweet, so onions have some calories because they add sugar. I mean, you know, don't get crazy. Onions are good for you, obviously. There's nothing wrong with an onion. But I am trying to count, and everything counts. It's very easy to add up hundreds of extra calories. Oh, 2 3/8. And again, then you get into the whole thing. 2 ounces raw versus 2 ounces cooked. This is going to be 2 ounces raw. I mean, again, you could drive yourself insane with that. All right. So now, unlike what we did with the meatloaf, I actually am going to just go from the root to the other side because I would like to have longer strings. So see, when you cut it that way, you get these nice little rings in the onion. And that's going to look beautiful with the Brussels sprouts. Oop, that knife, even though I sharpened it, that was close. All right, so now I'm going to put these into the pan. Heat it up. I'm going to put the onions in. I'm sure you can hear that. And I'm going to put a little pepper. Where's my pepper? Actually, I'll take these so you can see that. Oh, this is a big pan. Get a cast iron skillet if you don't have one. These are amazing, amazing pieces of equipment. You can live on a cast iron skillet. And I'm actually going to, I'd rather destroy my white cloth than my, woo, now I got the onions coming up. And a little bit of salt. And a little bit of pepper. Ooh. They were on the stovetop for 7 minutes, and then we take them off heat for 5 minutes, and they finish cooking. And actually, once we pull them off heat, we're actually going to put the lemon on them. So I'm going to put these back on. I'm going to watch the time for 7 minutes. I've got this on medium-high or so. I'm now, while that's happening, very quickly, I'm going to zest a lemon for you. Ooh, that is a lot. And I'm going to zest a whole lemon. And again, you hold the object that you are zesting in your hand, and you move the planer across it. Don't sit there and go like this back and forth. You know, when we were doing the nutmeg, we went like that. Don't do that if you're doing that for a lemon, because you'll go right into the white part. I guess that's called the pit. And that's a little more bitter. Zest, zest, zest. And of course I have this great little lemon zester that I get it out. Now I'm only going to do the juice of a half a lemon. So I'm going to cut this lemon in half. I don't have my juicer. That's okay. You don't need every piece of fancy equipment in the world. I'm going to take a fork, yes, a fork, not a spoon, and I'm going to go into it, and I'm going to just twirl this around. Okay? And that's going to go in. So let's check the Brussels sprouts again. I'm going to bring them back to the table. And this pan's getting a little hot. So what happens in the cast iron skillet, which is beautiful, which is what I want to show you, is it really roasts them. Onions, cayenne pepper, and heat. Makes your nose go. See how nice it gets, a nice and brown, starts to roast a little bit, okay? And the onions are providing a nice little moisture in the pan for the Brussels sprouts. That's going to go back on, and we probably have about 5 minutes or so, or maybe a little bit less. So if you're cooking with me at home, put the tape on pause, come back in about 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll finish up the Brussels sprouts. All right, so the Brussels sprouts have been on the stovetop for about 7 minutes. We had the lid on for about 5. So I'm going to remember that they're hot. Oh, I already have a rag over there. Look at that. So I'm going to pull them off. I'm going to put my rag here because, again, I don't want to scorch my butcher block. So beautifully roasted. I put some of the lemon in there because it was a little bit hot. I'm actually going to put the rest of my zest in. The zest of a lemon, again, some of you may think that's too much lemon for you. It's not for me. I've got 30 minutes, is that right? 25 minutes left on my meatloaf. So I'm just going to put this top on. I'm going to keep this off heat, and this is going to stay nice and warm and cook the rest of the way through. So while that's actually doing that, why don't we go ahead and finish up the yams. So pull these off. We boiled these up. You can certainly roast them if you want to. They're still very hot. Put the bowl on. Zero it out. We get 3 ounces. Turn it on. Turning it on before you zeroed it out always helps. And there we go. And we left the skins on. Ooh, look at that. That's 1 ounce. 2 5/8, 2 3/4, 3. That's all you get. All right, so we hardly need to pull out the electric mixer to mix this up. But what I am going to do is get my zester again, clean it off. So we use this for nutmeg, lemon, and we're going to use it for a little bit of orange zest too. Same thing. Hold the fruit or the nut or whatever's in your hand. That's enough. Now, I'm also going to use a little bit of the orange juice. And actually, I had a bottled orange juice, but isn't that silly for me to open that up when, in fact, I've got a fresh one? So why don't we just quarter that up. We'll squeeze a little orange juice in there. And again, resist putting a big pat of butter. Then we're just going to mash this up a little bit. And that's all we're going to do for our yams. Now, put a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. And you're saying, but John, they're going to be cold by the time the yams come out. And I'm going to say, you're totally right, but I wanted to get them done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the yams that we're not going to use, that are in my warm pan, and I'm going to stick them in a bowl off to the side. Again, I can eat these later in the week. Take a spatula, and I'll just stick it in there. And actually, this is another, you can also mash them up with this. This is good. And obviously, if you're making for more people than just yourself, let's say 2 people, 6 ounces. Maybe you do want to use an electric mixer. And we have the skins in this. I'm just going to take this. I'm going to keep it warm in my little pan on the back of the stove. And therefore, we got to use yet another dish to mess up the kitchen. So, all right. So again, we now have 20 minutes left on the meatloaf. So if you're following along with me, pause your videotape and come back to me about 15-20 minutes, and we'll take the meatloaf out of the oven. Okay, all right, we've had our meatloaf in the oven. We got a minute left. I'm actually going to turn the timer off. I've got my instant read thermometer. I'm moving. Now I know you're like, oh, what's all that stuff? It's just the egg white. Calm down. Calm down. I'm going to stick my instant read thermometer in and not touch anything there. Woo, and I can tell as it zooms on past 140, 150. It's fine. In fact, it's more than fine. All right, that's going to come out. And you're like, I know that looks sort of gross. Well, I shouldn't say that about my food, that it looks gross, but I know what you're thinking. But this stuff This is just, I actually eat this. This is just the egg. See that? That just comes right off. Don't even worry about it. Because when you bake this in your pan, all this sort of goes back in. Look at that though, I'll tell you what. Those of you that have cooked meatloaf before, that's mostly juice. You can see that by the little bubbles, there's not a lot of fat there. Again, this is egg. This is a little bit of the egg that came out, not a big deal. But there's just not that much fat, that's juice. Now, you should let this rest. This is thinner, so you probably only need to let this rest about 10 minutes or so. Now remember, as a mass, the bigger the mass, right, the more it gets going with the heat. This is smaller, but again, heat is going to go to the inside as it starts to cool down. It's going to go inside, it's going to go to the middle, and it distributes the juices. If I were to cut this in now, any of the moisture that was in my meatloaf would start to come out. So I'm not going to touch this. And this goes for chicken, this goes for steak, this goes for everything. You always want to pull a steak out, or a roast, I should say. Let's use the example of a roast, a bigger piece. You always want to pull that out like 10 degrees under your finished temperature, because once you pull it out, the heat continues to go to the coldest part. And so even though it's 10 degrees under, by the time it rests for 20 minutes, the temperature inside would have come up as the heat disperses in the meat. So I'm going to let this rest for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to plate all of this up. Be right back. Okay, we are ready to plate this up. I am going to let this keep resting until the last possible minute, but I'm going to get my, let's get the Brussels sprouts. Get those Brussels sprouts that have been sitting here oh so patiently on the back of the stove. Just a little pepper on that. Oh. We should weigh that. I'm weighing it. I'm sorry, I got to do it. We went through all this trouble. Let's figure out, because I think we put in 6 ounces. Let's see what happens. Let's see what we got when we do this. 5 7/8. And I need my spatula. Beautiful little yams. We have that. I'm going to actually take an orange while I think about it. And I'm going to cut it on this board. And slice this up. And again, I think it's really important, even if it's for you, why shouldn't you have a nice presentation with your food? All right, so now we're going to cut up this meatloaf. Again, I want to point this out. This is just egg white stuff. It's fine. In fact, off camera, I'm going to eat that, but I'm not going to eat that in front of you. I am looking for my grandfather's spatula, which I love. Look how thin that sucker is. Take this meatloaf off. And unlike the episode of the salmon, I didn't burn the parchment paper. So now, you only get 4 ounces of this. So once again, we're going to measure this out. So it was 4 ounces, it was a pound of meat going in, so 16 ounces. So I'm going to zero this out, and I'm going to actually I'm going to put this meatloaf on top and see how much it weighs now with everything in it. So 1 pound, 4 ounces. So that means you get basically 5 ounces now. That's nice. So we basically had 1 ounce of filler, which is tomatoes, onions, but all of that was already accounted for in the calories. So we get to eat it. Hurrah for us. The easiest way, since you already proportioned, I think, sort of cut it in half, best you can, and then cut it again, because you get 1/4 of the meatloaf. And again, a little bit of extra is not going to kill you. But look at that. Isn't that beautiful? The red of the tomato and the green and the onion, I just think it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So, and again, this is Bison 90-10, which means it's 90% lean, 10% fat. Try to make that look better. And there you go. Bison meatloaf, Brussels sprouts with onions, oops, and our little yams with fresh orange zest and orange juice. And the total calorie count is 396. Oop, that's my buzzer telling me it's done. That was for the rest. 396 calories, and this is 10 points if you are on Weight Watchers. The meatloaf is 233, and the yams and the Brussels sprouts are about 150. So this is a great meal. You've enjoyed making it. You're going to eat it slowly. You're going to be satisfied, all right? So take care of yourself, because as I like to say, there's no replacing you. I'm Clese on The Unexpected Guest. Come back as often as you like and get some more great recipes and good food for you and your family. Thanks.